Democrats, amazingly, and yet, unfortunately, so unsurprisingly, have learned absolutely nothing from this. Not that I would expect them to, but they are doubling down on the narrative from pre-election, which was, again, half the country hates women, more than half the country won't vote for a woman president. They don't want to see women have rights, especially women of color. And then the new one they're throwing in, which is, we're stupid. That's the best one, right? Uneducated. Trump's voting base is uneducated. And it's becoming harder and harder. We'll get into that in a moment. But before I do, it's becoming harder and harder for them to even make sense of their own story. Because the way they are pitching it, you would believe that 100% of women voted for Kamala and 100% of men voted for Trump, because this is a man versus woman election. This is women's rights versus not women having rights. And, women just want rights and men just don't want women to have rights. And so that's what you would think. And then you look at the actual, exit poll data, and you see that, okay, 60% of men or somewhere around that voted for Trump, which means that 40% or, a solid percentage of men voted for Kamala. So more than half of men voted for Trump, but not all of them. And then not only that, but also 45% of women voted for Trump. That's almost half. So almost half of women voted, apparently, for this presidential candidate that wants to take away their rights as women. 45% of women hate the idea of a woman president. That's the real story. Well, actually, both men and women were fairly evenly divided on this subject, and it's not as simple as the way you're pitching it. So no, your summary, your closing analysis of what we just saw the other day in the election is completely inaccurate. For various reasons. They somehow have to justify that 21% of black men are white nationalists because 21% of black men, more than 1 in 5 black men, voted for Trump. I think the highest Republican turnout of black men ever, something like that. Not only that, but 55% of Latino men, last I checked. 55% of Latino men. That's more than half of Latino men. And I think, Latino women, Latinas, voted more in favor of Kamala, but not a crazy amount in favor. And I think if they just did Latinos as a whole, it's pretty evenly split. But Latino men are more than 50%, more than half, in for Trump. And so now not only do you have 1 in 5 black men being a white supremacist, but you also have more than half of Latino men are white nationalists as well and want themselves deported or whatever they're trying to say. So you have, okay, half of women don't want to have rights for themselves. 1 in 5 black men wants to be a slave again. More than half of Latinos want to be deported and arrested for being in this country and are also white supremacists. And also, all of you are stupid and bad. You're bad, evil, and stupid. And all actively voting against your own rights and interests. That's the best they can come up with. That's the best they can come up with. And I don't know if it's just them coping, crying about it, venting, But there's no possible way they actually think this is going to work. This is going to bring people over to their side. How could they possibly think that? How could you possibly think that that when you double, triple, quadruple down on just, now you've done it so much that now you've even lost the majority. It kind of worked when you had 51% of the voters compared to 49% of Trump voters, where you could, for the past 4 years, go, he won the popular vote. And you guys are all extremists, even though Donald Trump that same year got, the second highest amount of votes of any presidential candidate in history. That's a radical fringe minority, of course. But now they don't even have a slight majority. They are in the minority by a decisive amount. And they are continuing to double down on all the things that got them there, which is telling people that if they don't agree with them, they are stupid and bad people. And it's amazing how quickly they are willing to throw any group of people under the bus that they supposedly care so much about. They're people of color, the LGBT, they're women, all these oppressed intersectional groups of people that the Democrats have looked at for decades as nothing more than voting blocks. And these voting blocks, aka human beings, owe it to the Democrat Party to vote for them unconditionally. If you're a black person in America and you don't vote Democrat, you're a bad person. As Joe Biden would say, you're not even black. If you are having a hard time deciding between Trump and the Democrat, you ain't black, according to Joe Biden. Joe Biden knows black. Latino men? Oh, yeah, well, have you even met a Latino? Machismo, sexist, misogynist. Of course they don't want to vote for a woman president. Of course they'd rather vote against their own rights than be led by a woman. That's how Latino men are. White women. Ugh. In fact, the only people in this country that are good are the 91% of black women who voted for Kamala Harris. In the words of Sonny Hostin or whoever it was on The View, black women once again tried to save this country.
I want to dig further into the demographics because black women tried to save this country again last night. 92% of black women voted for the vice president. You have Latinas in the 70 percentile voting for the vice president. What we did not have is white women who voted about 52%, right, for Donald Trump. Uneducated white women, is my understanding. You have Latino men, actually, voting more for him. And you have, and black men was not the story. We're not the story here because they voted almost 80% for the vice president. Right. So why do you think that uneducated white women voted against their reproductive health freedoms? And why do you think Latino men voted in favor of someone that's going to deport?
I'm sorry. As Anthony Cumia discussed last week, anytime 91% of a group agrees on a particular political thing, I don't know. I'm tempted to think that's not a flex, at least. Not going to say it's a bad thing. There are obviously things that 99, 100% of people agree on. But let's put it this way. If every other group of people is pretty evenly divided, even the groups of people that you would think would be partial are starting to veer away from that, and yet there's still one specific group that is unwavering on this one political question, Kamala versus Trump. I don't know. I just don't think it's a flex. I wouldn't exactly put that as you tried to save the country. I think everybody who voted for Trump tried to save the country. And I think that for a lot of those people, the non-straight white males, it took a lot of free thinking and critical thinking and willingness to break from the herd, willingness to not be guilted into voting the direction that everyone around you or the majority of people around you tell you you need to vote or the way you need to think. It took a lot of that for, Latino men to switch over to Trump in record numbers and black men to switch over to Trump in record numbers. It took a lot of that. And that, to me, is more in alignment with trying to save the country. It's a braver thing to do than to just unwaveringly stick with what you know in spite of all evidence and reality. So thank you, black men and Latino men and Latinos as a whole. And of course, as usual, the boys, white men. Come on. We're always trying to save the country. Let's be honest. But thank you for hopping on board. I'm just kidding. Not really. The point is, the big point is the stupid, uneducated thing. And I know that conversation I just had is not putting many points in my favor for me not being stupid and uneducated. But that's the idea. That's the idea. It is true that Kamala voters are much more likely to have a college degree of some sort, while Trump voters are much more likely to have not graduated or gone to college or have any type of degree. And by that metric, we are able to, I guess, technically say that Trump voters are less educated. If the way you measure education is simply in terms of what level of formal education and degrees you have attained. But again, that necessitates a belief in the system itself. That necessitates that you agree that college is a relatively unflawed, higher education and academia is relatively unflawed compared to any other industry. And therefore these degrees actually mean something. And so it's not biased in any way either, Academia is certainly not biased in one direction or the other. It certainly doesn't push people through this system in one direction politically. It certainly doesn't do that. It just so happens that, when you go to college and learn more, you naturally become more liberal because the more you know, the more you understand how the liberals are right. That's the idea. Education equals liberal. That's not necessarily the case. In fact, I'm going to go and say it's the complete opposite. As a uneducated, non-college graduate Trump voter myself, I'm going to go ahead and say that I don't think the fact that you have a college degree means you are more educated than me at all. I really don't. Am I saying I'm the most educated person on the planet? No. Am I saying that the average person I've encountered with a college degree is standoutedly educated and intelligent and, above me and my other friends that maybe didn't attain those degrees? My brother, everyone in my family pretty much. Am I saying that they're not better than us or smarter than us or more educated? Yeah, I'm saying that. You might be more indoctrinated than us, statistically speaking. If you went through college and graduated, you were likely coming up in a very left-leaning environment. You were likely exposed to unabashedly leftist ideas and arguments and shown no opposing views to those. In fact, oppositional views to those ideas were discouraged in your college. And it's not a surprise to me at all that you came out on the other side of that as a Kamala voter. And no, I don't think that has anything to do with you being smart. I'm not saying you're dumb. I'm just saying that a lot of you are just products of your environment, and the environment of college is liberal. Look, if we're being real, the majority of Trump supporters are not necessarily geniuses either. You know? The same follower type of person who would grow up in a city suburbs or urban area and go to, and have a liberal upbringing and liberal neighborhood and everything like that. And if they're not a critical, free-thinking person and they just go along with whatever everybody around them thinks, that follower type of person will become a liberal. Well, in the same way, if you take that same person and expose them to a rural area in the country where everybody's a Trump supporter or whatever, and everyone they hang out with and talk to out there fucks with Trump and votes Republican, well, that follower person is going to be a Republican out there. So I'm not saying that like all Trump supporters are free thinkers and all Kamala voters are, brainwashed drones. I'm not saying that at all. I am saying that college and the majority of college-educated people voting Democrat is not the flex you think it is. It's really not. And not only is it not the flex you think it is, but banking on that as your means of winning back the electorate is definitely not the play you think it is. I don't even know if you think it's a play. I can't tell if you're just that mad that you're just letting the cat out of the bag at this point and just saying, fuck you guys. I can't tell if you're like literally just taking your ball and going home and being like, I don't even want to appeal to you. Fuck you guys, you stupid pieces of shit. You racist, sexist, authoritarian, Nazi, uneducated pieces of shit. Should have stayed in school. You'd be smart like us and voted for Kamala. I can't tell if that's just you being bitchy or if you legitimately believe that you can like bully Trump supporters into coming back over to the Democrat side. The same way you thought you could do so beforehand by calling us all weird. I mean, I said this before on that Don't Believe the Hype video we discussed earlier about the Instagram likes. The entire Kamala campaign throughout the entirety of this race was a prom queen campaign. We referred to when you're in high school and you have, elections for class president and stuff, and all the kids get up and write speeches and make like a mock election out of it and talk about policies they want to see for the class and whatever they want to do. And it's all stupid and playing pretend essentially. But, they are at least pretending to have policies. Whereas the prom queen and prom king has nothing to do with that. The prom queen and prom king is all about who's popular, who throws the best parties, who's the prettiest, who's the hottest guy, whatever. And that's the entire prom. It's a popularity contest. It's the prom queen and prom king. And that was the Kamala campaign. They didn't speak to policies really at all on any notable or significant level. But they did speak a lot to how everyone else liked them, how popular they were. And if you were not a Kamala supporter, you were like a weird kid. You sat like alone at lunch and you wear glasses and have acne and like, you don't get invited to any of the cool parties and you're a virgin, whatever. And it's like, okay, that was how they tried to win. Like, you're the weird kids. Nobody wants to hang out with you. Ew, gross. Who invited you? Who told these guys about the party? Gross. Go home. We're not letting you in. That was how they, and so that was the tack that they took for this election. And of course it didn't work because they tried to play the whole thing on JD Vance, and it turns out he fucking rocks. Turns out Trump obviously rocks. It turns out Trump supporters, most of us, including myself, rock. And it turns out that Kamala sucks. Tim Walz is legitimately weird. And the majority of vocal Kamala supporters in your life are the actual annoying weird people. I'm not saying all Kamala supporters are annoying and weird, But if we had to like have a competition over who is more annoying and weird between the average Trump supporter and the average Kamala supporter, let's be honest. Come on. It's not even a competition. It's not. And we all saw that. We all saw it. So it didn't work for them. And now their big plan is to go even further down that road. Well, it didn't work when we called them weird nerds, losers, unpopular. It didn't work when we called them evil racists, sexual assault apologists, and whatever else. Maybe we should try also calling them stupid. Because, of course, they weren't smart enough and educated enough to believe all the propaganda. And that's what education means to these people. And when they call you uneducated, what they mean is you are not adequately regurgitating the propaganda that we are jamming down your throat. You are not repeating the lines back to us. You are not educated in our miseducation that we're feeding you. That means you're stupid. No, it means you're stupid.